failed. I failed each and every exam I've given in my life, starting from school. मैं 10th compartment में fail हुई थी यार, मैं maths में भी compartment आई थी, मैं college में fail हुई, मैं NCA में fail हुई, मैं bar exam में fail हुई. I failed all my life consistently, but I'm still where you are, right? We're still at the same place. So then that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. Dude, it doesn't matter.
Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're all doing great. Today we're interviewing Tanuja Basera, who is a senior associate at Vialto Partners here in Vancouver, and she's also my senior from law school. So we both went to the same place, and she is my, I think, 4 years senior. And
I think so. 2008. No, 13.
Yeah, so 17. So
yeah,
4 years my senior, and very generously she's opened the house and taken out time to help, you know, all of you guys who are needing a lot of guidance with your entire process. All of you foreign trained lawyers who are looking to get your licensing done, who are maybe stuck in articleship or are about to take the bar exam. So we're going to cover all of those topics today, and let's just get started. So how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
And thank you so much for opening a beautiful house and taking out so much time for us.
Of course.
So let's start, let's just dive into it straight away.
Sure, yeah.
So how was college life for you?
College life was interesting. It's something that we all used to say at AIL, that it's a paid vacation for 5 years.
Yeah.
That is pretty much how it was, more or less. I don't think I was necessarily like a very studious person in college. I was still trying to figure out law. What law do I want to do, which law do I not want to do, more importantly, and then just trying to just understand life as well, because you're a young adult at that time, in your 20s, so you're trying to understand and figure out life too. So it was a mix. It was a great experience, and yeah, it was more like a vacation for 5 years.
So as a law student from India, do you feel like academics are more important, or do you need to give equal time to research papers, moods? Did that aspect of your life help you in, ahead when you were working in litigation in Delhi, or even here? Do you feel like those extracurricular activities shaped like a certain part of your personality that helps you today?
So I am like the non-ideal law student where I didn't do moot, I didn't do research papers, I didn't do moot court.
At all?
I didn't do any of that. The only thing I did was briefly, I was part of the debating society in our college because I really enjoyed debating. So that's something that I did briefly. Apart from that, I've always been more of a sports person.
Yeah.
So I played more sports, and I love to dance. So I was part of the dancing society in law college.
Yeah.
I was part of the debating society, and I was in sports. So I wish I could say that I did research papers and moots, because that's something I always wanted to do when I was in law school, but it's something that somehow didn't happen. But of course, if you do that, it can only add to your skills. Like it's an advantage. I personally didn't feel the gap in my professional career because of not having done those things, because I think sports helped me a lot as shaping me as a person in confidence and in real life skills. So academically, I would say I was never like an academically bright student anyway. So I always focused more on like life skills than like academic skills.
So then how did you decide corporate or litigation?
I decided corporate because I feel like that's how law schools kind of gear you. They always gear you towards getting a job or a pre-placement offer, like we call it, at one of those big law firms in India. So because everyone was doing that and everybody wanted to get a job at the best law firm in the country, I also was like, of course I want to do that, because all my friends were also doing it. So I took corporate law because when I was in law school, in your 4th year you had to choose either corporate or litigation. So I chose corporate, and for 2 years that's what I did. But what I realized after 2 years of doing that and interning in corporate firms was that I don't want to do that. So unlike a lot of people who graduate from law school knowing what they want to do, I graduated knowing what I did not want to do, which was I didn't want to do corporate law. So back then, 10 years ago is when I graduated, you didn't have many options. You either do corporate or you do litigation. So when my mind was clear, I didn't want to do corporate, I jumped into litigation. So that's how I knew. That's how I didn't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew what I did not want.
So it was just a process of elimination, like okay,
You could
I
say
will
that.
not do this, so let's do this.
Absolutely.
But do you have any regrets that later on, like after working in litigation, do you feel like, oh no, maybe I should have just like stuck with a corporate job?
No.
No.
No. I was very, very happy in litigation with the experience that I got. Although, because for me, and this is very subjective, like everything I will tell you, we'll talk about today is very subjective. It's my experience and how what my experience has been with all of this, right? So my experience as a human being, it's very important for me to have a human element in my job. If you take that human element away, then I lose motivation to do what I do. So dealing with corporates was not something that motivated me. Like your M&As, your cap marks and all those things were too dry for me. So even though I didn't know if I wanted to do litigation, I just knew that between the two, that had more human element, and that's why I went for that.
So you were happy working in litigation, getting like I'm sure very rewarding cases, and then suddenly you're in Canada. Like how did that happen?
So yeah, that was I'll have to go back to like maybe my college for that. While interning, just going through life in college, my sister was doing university. She was doing a master's from Nottingham in the UK, Nottingham University. So I went to visit her for a month and all. And then of course, as Indians growing up, you're exposed to a lot of other cultures, like you're the West and then Europe and the other ways of living. So I, as a person, was always very curious about, how do they do their stuff? Like how does it work there? And then you would always see movies or stuff where, in your people after they graduate, they take a year off or they go and live and work in another country. So I also wanted to do that. I wanted to, in my 20s, live and work in another country and experience another culture. But it was actually honestly as simple as that. I just wanted to go out for a few years, live and work in another country, and then come back to India.
So you came here as a permanent resident, or
I did,
okay.
because I understood the limitations of an Indian passport when it comes to immigration, specifically to Canada. Like unlike other countries, like a New Zealand passport, Australian passport, where you can, or even a Japanese Korean passport, where you can come here on a working holiday program for a few years and then get a job or not go back, do what you want. As an Indian passport holder, you can either come here as a PR, which is not always the easiest thing to do, or study, or get sponsored for a work permit by an employer, which is also not the easiest thing to do. Which is why coming to study here is always the best route to take if you don't qualify for PR, like those points and all, then coming here to study is obviously the most straightforward way to enter Canada.
So you came here as a PR, and like, were you sure that okay, I just want to work as a lawyer here?
No, so Canada wasn't even my first choice, to be honest. My first choice was the UK because of my sister. I had gone there. I was there for a month, and I liked it. I liked how it was back then. So I was like, I'm gonna try and be here. And my sister had a job offer in the UK after her masters. So I worked my way. Like she was going to meet her prospective employer, I kind of was like, yeah, can I also come with you? So I went for a breakfast with her prospective employer, who also happened to be a lawyer. But she was employing my sister for her side business that she was going to do. So we started talking, and she actually offered me a job at her law firm. She's like, at the breakfast, she's like, because I was practicing criminal law back then. So she's like, would you like to come and work? Because I'm also I was working with a prosecutor in New Delhi, but she was working on the defense side. So she said, would you like to? Because we struck a good connection over breakfast, and then so I was working towards going to the UK. And then Brexit happened around that time. So all those things kind of fell through. And then my next option that I was looking at was Australia. Because it's just proximity to home, Australia is not that far from India. If I want to come and visit family, whatever, I didn't want to go too far. But Australia, again, back then was very strict about its immigration. Now Australia is slowly opening its immigration as well. And Europe is always closed to immigration. US was a tough one. So Canada was more of a third option after UK, Australia. And then because Canada at that time was the only country that was welcoming in terms of like opening their borders up, and the time that I applied, the express entry score wasn't as high as it is right now. So as a single applicant with a 4-year work history as a lawyer, I was able to actually make it through express entry with no problem, and then that's how I came here as a PR first. Like back then I was able to actually do it, come here straight as a PR.
So then you landed, then what was your game plan? Like, were you looking for a job straight away, or were you thinking, okay, I want to, did you know about the NCA, about the process that lies ahead when you decided to come here, or was it just like trying to find something, okay, this is how it's supposed to be, step 1, step 2, step 3, and then how did you navigate?
Yeah, I knew everything before I moved to Canada. I did like my research full on. And I already had my now husband, Harsh, he was already here. We were dating back then. So I also had an idea of what Canada was like from him. So I knew about the life in Canada. And then I had done my research on what does it take to become a lawyer in Canada. So I already knew about the NCA process. I'd actually started taking my NCA exams in India.
Oh, okay.
So I took, out of the 5, I took 2 in India, and I left the 3 to complete here. I landed in Canada with a game plan, and I wanted to hit the ground running, and I didn't want to waste any time chilling in Canada. So the minute I got here, I think 10 days is what I would say I spent doing not much and just familiarizing myself with the city, how to cross a road here, because I jaywalked so many times and then Harsh would be like, this is not how you do it. You gotta wait for your light to start crossing, and then downloading all this, understanding transit app, how it works, how you don't enter from the back door, you enter from the front of the bus. Thank you driver, thank you, all of that. So learning all those things took me a while, even understanding roads, and so I could go out and do stuff on my own. So I think I gave myself 10 days, and then we went for a short trip because Harsh was already here he was doing MBA from UBC, so he already had his huge circle of friends. So they were got done with their MBA, so they were all taking a short trip to the island, Vancouver Island. So I also got to see a little bit of that. And then that's actually when I decided to stay because my previous plan was, when I came, was to go to Toronto.
Okay.
Because that's the legal hub. And that has way more opportunities, it pays more. But then Harsh told me that, if you want to go to Toronto, I'm not going to stop you, but just come to Vancouver, give it 3 months. If you hate it, go back. I didn't need 3 months to convince me to stay in Vancouver. It took me that one trip to the island, and I knew that, Vancouver's Vancouver. I think I'm going to stay here. So I think I gave myself just those 10 days and then went for that trip, and then I went full mode on how to get a job, what do I need to do, settlement services, speaking to people, all of that. So I had a plan in mind.
So what was your first job in Canada?
My first job in Canada was at the law firm where I ended up articling also.
Okay.
So I did apply at a coffee shop as well while I was looking for jobs. I never got a call back. So, but my first job was as a legal assistant, as we all do when we're writing the NCA. So, and I just got lucky because I came here in Jan, and in March I had that job. But I think it was also because I said, I hit the ground literally running. 10 days, and after that I was like, okay, what do I need to do? Started talking to people and all of that. So that was my first job as a legal assistant.
Wow. So I get a lot of messages from people who come here as PRs and they're having the hardest time trying to land jobs as legal assistants because they feel like the employer is looking for that diploma from here, like local education.
Some of them
so then what happens, how do you stand out? What makes the employer actually hire hiring?
Yeah, some employers do that. And I remember when I was applying, some of the places did say that they wanted a Canadian diploma, either they wanted a paralegal certificate or they wanted some certificate that you've done something. So I didn't apply for those positions. I only applied for the positions that didn't have any of those requirements. And the thing that set me apart and the thing that people can do that sets them apart is two things. One was that as a permanent resident, you have access to settlement services like ISS of BC, Mosaic services. They all help newcomers with finding their first job, and it's for free. And you don't have to. They can actually even provide you financial assistance. In fact, I got financial assistance to pay for all my NCA exams by those settlement services.
What?
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't know about it.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so there's these two settlement services called ISS of BC and Mosaic services, and I also only got to know about them because I'm that old grandmother who loves to pick out pamphlets wherever I go. So they were in the corner at the airport, and I saw a few pamphlets, and I was like, I love going through pamphlets, and that's where I saw that these are settlement services that can help you learn how to draft your resume, because your resume and cover letter, the way you do it back, and I can't speak for all of India, but the way you do it, at least in Delhi, for a job in Delhi, is so different from how you would do it here.
Okay.
So, and I didn't know the differences. So the settlement services help, because you can join whichever program you want. So I joined the CV, resume and cover letter program. They were amazing, like such dedicated professionals who want to ensure that you as a newcomer, and it wasn't even just the newcomers, they were also Canadian citizens in that workshop who were unemployed and they were looking for employment, and they wanted to just do something differently. So I used to go there. I took their course for I think a month, where I'd go there every day in the morning, and we would sit with all the newcomers, have a nice chat. It was a way to build network as well. And they told us to choose one posting that you wanted to apply to. So I chose one, and then we spent the next few weeks drafting our cover letter as per that posting, and then they would tell us the do's and don'ts of resumes and how differently it works here. So that was the one advantage I had, that I took use of that service. And it also helped that my now husband Harsh was already here, so in their MBA they were also taught, because it was an international MBA, so they knew people from all over the world are coming. So they also provided them with the do's and don'ts of how do resumes work. Like now MBA is about to come to an end, so what do you need to keep in mind with your resume when you're applying for a job? So he gave me his knowledge that he knew from his MBA, and I had the settlement services. So the mix of two, I combined both of them, and when I applied for that job, I got it. That was actually the second job that I applied for, and I got it, and I think I only got it because of the cover letter and the resume note taking that I learned when I came here, of what exactly do you need to do to get an attention of an employer.
Oh wow. So how did you go about finding relevant job posts? Like Indeed, LinkedIn?
I did a lot of Indeed. Actually, I didn't do a lot of LinkedIn back then, but it was mostly Indeed. I found a lot of postings on Indeed, but like I said, a lot of them had that you need to some had Canadian, they wanted only Canadian experience, which I think is very unfair. The second was you need a certificate or something. So I only the reason also why I applied for only two was because there were also just very few who were very open to welcome people without too many qualifications, that I want Canadian education, I want Canadian work experience, and I want a certificate. So I went for the one that I felt was, because the way the form that I applied to, the way they worded their application was also very inclusive. Like they didn't create too many barriers for you. So I was like, okay, let's give this a try.
So you must have been really surprised though, like you just came here and job sorted,
I
it's like halfway done, like oh it's like good pace.
I thought I was super grateful to my luck, to whoever was up in the stars, making sure that things were working out so nicely for me. I was surprised, but more than anything I was very grateful.
So then how did you manage, what did you were working as a legal assistant versus what it's like in Delhi?
Before I touch on that, actually I wanted to go back to the previous question and just say, because you said what kind of helped in getting that job.
Yeah.
The make it or break it, after obviously cover letter and resume is the first thing. That just gets you like a entry into the rounds of interviews that you're going to have. But once you do get that call, you need to prep for an interview. And again, apart from how resumes are done so differently, again in Delhi, because I can only speak for Delhi, the interviews are so different here. Like in Delhi, the interviews that I had attended, they were more knowledge based.
Yeah.
They tell me what this article would do of this specific statute. If we were doing this, then what statute or what section would apply to this situation. Here, it's the complete 180. It's like we don't care about your knowledge because knowledge can be learned.
Yeah.
I want to see if you're a good fit for the company or not.
It's a vibe check, right?
It's a vibe check.
It's a vibe personality.
It's a 100% personality check. And so that was the biggest difference. And then even in the vibe check, the personality thing, the questions are very different, which you would, or in my experience, I've only been asked those questions once in Delhi, and that was also when I was interviewing for a fellowship, which was run by an American.
Okay.
So I now I'm like, okay, it was an American, that's why he was asking me those fit questions and not knowledge questions.
Yeah.
So again, the interview part was the make it or break it, which I have to, again, I know Harsh doesn't like me saying this, but he literally sat me down, and because he was taught all this in his MBA, he literally prepared me. He told me these are the questions that are going to be asked when they want to see how much of a fit are you in the company. Like tell me your strengths and weaknesses, and more important, when was the last time there was conflict and how did you handle it? Favorite question ever. When did you have a conflict? How did you handle it? So I never even thought in my interview vocabulary that all these kind of questions can also come in, because I was prepped so well by Harsh on how do I need to prep myself for this question, that exactly those questions were asked. And I was already so prepared I had a list already of what my strengths were, what my weaknesses were. I really had to jog my memory on what was the last conflict situation I was in, how did I handle it, and all those personality questions which I never in my professional life had to delve into. So I think that's one thing I would recommend people do if they decide to come here and they want to find a job, is first know that your CV cover letter is going to be so different. Take the time to learn and understand how do you need to draft it differently to suit the Canadian market, and also prepare as much as you can for the Canadian style of interview, which is so different. Learn how to do vibe check.
For me, when I went in for my interview, the first question he asked me was, so did you do something fun today? And I said no, but the day just started, so I still have some time.
Right. I know you have to be
and I was not prepared
for that
to
question,
guide me, so I was just sort of going with the flow that okay, let's see.
Right.
But thankfully that worked out.
That day, and even the settlement services that I took the services of, they also had mock interviews.
Okay.
So that also helped. I think that settlement services was such a great thing that I did. So my advice would be pick up pamphlets from the airport in the corner, which no one looks at, or look up Mosaic and ISS of BC. They also provide. So they paid for my NCA exams because they're so expensive. So, and I was working. I'm sure it'll come up somewhere in our conversation of how when you start from scratch, they don't pay you a lot because they don't consider your work experience in India as any experience. So that you don't start with the highest salary bracket. So when you're trying to manage such high rent in Vancouver with groceries and everything, any financial assistance is obviously helpful. And for me, it was those settlement services. So to take that pressure of NCA 250, at my time it was 250.
Now it's 550.
Oh my god, I can't even. Okay, so that's a lot. So that helped. That helped. Financial assistance.
So about your experience as the legal assistant in this firm, how did you find the work culture to be?
So I was lucky that I was the legal assistant to just one lawyer. and that one lawyer was the partner of the firm. And he treated me with the respect of a lawyer. He never looked at me as a legal assistant. He was like, "You're a lawyer in India," and because I had 4 years of work experience in the Delhi High Court, where for 2 years I was on the public prosecutor. I was working in the additional public prosecutor's office, so 2 years of hardcore crim, and then the other 2, once I was done with the 2 years, because it was making me very, I was losing trust in society after seeing all you read and do is, and honestly as a person I'm fine reading that kind of stuff,
but first thing in the morning.
I can also do that. Honestly, I can still do that. What was happening was I was going through FIRs and charge sheets of rape and murder like it was a magazine. Okay, fine. Like what next? And I was like, where is my sensitivity? I was losing sensitivity a little bit, which happens because that's what we say, right? Police officers, when they see a dead body or they see something, they don't react to the way we react, and then some people always say that, you guys don't have hearts, are you heartless? But it's not, they see it every day, you tend to lose sensitivity. So I was losing sensitivity towards a lot of things, and then I was also, I think, developing trust issues with society in general. So I was like, I think 2 years is good, and I wanted to then go on the civil side. So I went and worked with the standing counsel for the government of NCT. So that was mostly all writ petitions. So that was again good experience for 2 years on the civil side. So, and the partner knew about this experience because obviously he interviewed me. So he actually gave me that respect of having that work experience behind me. And so whenever we approached a file, he never let me approach that file as a law clerk. It was always like, you're the lawyer, think like a lawyer, tell me what we should do. So my experience as a legal assistant was less of an assistant, even though I had to do the assistant stuff of photocopying, scanning, couriering, all of this stuff I had to do. But the thing was that in Delhi, in those 4 years, as a lawyer also I had to do that. Because when you're litigating, you still have to scan, you have to stand with the photocopy bhaiya and ask him to photocopy all the stuff. You have to go to the registry and you have to submit the file, all that stuff. So technically, even though it was very assistant-y in the western part of the world, in New Delhi, that's all I did also. Like, that was a very big part of my job as a litigating lawyer. And all litigating lawyers, especially junior lawyers who between 1 to 5 years of experience, they also have to do that. So it wasn't any different. I was being a legal assistant in a way, but I was luckily getting that respect of being a lawyer at the firm as well. So I was very happy that I only had to work with that one lawyer, and that's what I did. And so my experience was good. It didn't feel like I was a legal assistant.
Okay. So then how did you balance a full-time job with NCA?
I didn't. I cried. I struggled. I was overwhelmed. It was everything. I really don't think I balanced it. It was something that I had to do. So I did it. Where after work I would, I don't know if you've seen the Vancouver Public Library.
No, not yet.
Not yet, okay. It's beautiful. You must see whenever you have a chance. So it was right across from my office. So after working, finishing my work day, I'd go to the Vancouver Public Libraries, and then I would come back home at like 9. So 6 to 9 I would be at the 9 to 5 9 to 6 I'd be at my job, 6 to 9 I'd be at the library, come back home, eat dinner and sleep, and that was my life till I cleared my NCA exams. Basically.
How much time did it take?
So to answer that question, I have to give you the background of how, this is just to save my face, is how I'm not the best student. I find work stress a lot easier to handle than academic stress. Just as a human being, as a person, and I've been like this in school, I'm not a good exam taker. I can study, I'm a good student, I can study. But now if you ask me to write an exam on it, the standardized testing format, I don't think it's meant to capture all abilities of thinking. And I'm just not a good exam taker. So it took me, I had to retake, and this was very embarrassing, but I had to retake crim. Because I had worked in criminal law for 2 years, so and I had to retake that, so it added a little bit of delay in my completion process, but I was very embarrassed when that happened. But the thing with the NCAs is it's so different from how we're taught at least, and I can't speak for all law colleges in India because some law colleges do teach the way we are supposed to learn in NCA.
Yeah.
But AIL's learning format was very different. It was more about
Cram. Just
learning.
Just write everything.
Just write, cram as much as you can. Exactly. Now that doesn't come in handy when you're writing the NCAs, because NCA is all about the IRAC method of like issue, reasoning, conclusion.
Application conclusion.
Application conclusion, yeah, all of that. Seems the A part, the most important part. So for me to switch, it was such a task for me to switch my brain to start thinking exam-wise, thinking like that. IRAC was so difficult for me to unlearn and relearn. And that's actually that's been the theme of my life in Canada. Unlearn, relearn. A lot of things that I've known in life, even personally and professionally, that's like the theme in my life in Canada. So that's what it was. So I didn't find NCAs easy, but that's also subjective, because when I was doing the NCAs, I obviously met a lot of people who were writing the NCAs, and a lot of them were like, "This is so easy. Like, what are you struggling with?" And I'm like, "Everything.
Yeah.
What are you finding so easy?" So it's very, very subjective. It depends on how you were as a student, how you are as an exam taker, more than anything, how you as an exam taker, and then just generally like how do you handle exams in life. And because I'm not the best, I found it to be tough.
No, because I get too nervous before the exam. Like
Same.
that half an hour when you're like logging in, setting it up with
Achha,
because it's all
for
online
you.
now, right?
For me, I went online.
And there's
I
this
went
one
personally.
person staring at you from the laptop
Yeah,
camera, and then
yeah.
there's a phone here because
Right,
the
you
side
have
view
things
as
to
well.
see, yeah.
And you feel like, oh my god, and my heart just goes like, I don't know any. And I mean, it shouldn't be difficult, right? Because you can see your notes, your books are open.
Yeah.
That way it's nice, but it just feels like, what if? Because sometimes you mumble when you write because you're trying to remember something.
Yeah.
And what if they feel like, oh, they cheated and just blacked us?
That actually happened to me, because I need to read out my question loudly to understand it. And I remember this was for my bar exam, not even my NCA, my bar exam. And the invigilator, the examiner was like, "Can you please keep quiet and not listen?" I was like, "This is my bar exam. Please do not talk to me right now." So I did have that happen to me. But I told the person, I'm like, "I'm sorry, this is how I understand questions, I have to read it out loud." But I know it's a lot of nerves. What I did was, I had a rule, 30 minutes before my exam, I would just stop. I would not look at any books. Because in the last 30 minutes, I'm not going to magically learn anything anyway. So 30 minutes before, I would just lounge, meditate, and Bhagwan ka naam, and then...
But I don't know, since AIL, whatever I used to go through in the last 5 minutes, that was always on the question paper. Always. And this is happening with NCA too.
Really?
Yeah.
Then you keep at it, because then that's a pattern in your life, and if you noticed it. But to be true, honest, I kind of had that too in AIL. Whatever you kind of ask that person coming out of the bathroom, like, "What was this? What are you talking about?" And that would come. I know. But that didn't happen to me in NCAs. So, but clearly it happens. It happens. So yeah. You do the 5-minute pen-day revision. Definitely.
So for all the viewers who are in the process of taking their NCA exams, do you have any tips how to go about the whole thing?
It's you kind of have to, and I don't know how everyone's studying because there are no notes for it technically, right? You have to kind of buy notes from either NCA tutor or these other things. Whatever, the biggest thing I would say is get familiar with the IRAC method. Like, get super familiar with how the IRAC method works. Even if you weren't taught like that in your law school, learn it, 100% learn it, and force your brain to think like that. And then you have to like go through everything. The most important thing I found, which was so different from PLTC, from the bar exam, was in the bar exam you didn't really need to understand the foundations that well. You need to be very good with time. But with the NCA, if you don't understand the foundation, you're not going to be able to answer the question. So it was very different. So that was also one thing which was, I was like struggling with them, like, why is my approach to study so different for my NCA, and then I had to redo my approach for my bar exam, because it's not the same. Both exams are not the same, so your approach is also shouldn't be the same. So, or can't be the same. I shouldn't say shouldn't. So with NCAs, I think it's very important to get your fundamentals right. Because I don't know if it was your experience with admin. This happens more in foundational law.
Okay.
Where they throw abstract scenarios at you, and that's why I think that exam is the one which has the most number of re-attempts also.
Yeah.
Because with foundational law, I think in my exam they gave me a zombie apocalypse sort of situation.
Okay.
And they said that this is what has happened, people are dying, I don't know how we should apply foundational law in that kind of situation anyway, but it was about if we could do this, what would we apply and how would you approach this situation and all that, and that's it. There was a 100-marker question. It was just a situation,
wow.
And in that situation there were 4 things, and you were like, that's it, that's my whole foundation law paper. I'm like, I'm gonna fail. How do I know how to do this? That's it. No MCQs, no nothing. But then I really had to like go back into the foundations that I studied of foundational law, and then attempted the question, and that's how I passed. So I felt like for NCAs, you need to get your fundamentals right. Like it can't just be time management. You need to really delve into the concepts that you're studying.
So when you were taking the NC exams, were you aware that your firm will offer you an articling position also?
Yes, because I had talked about it in my first interview already.
Okay.
So I made sure to talk about articling in the first interview when I was doing as a legal assistant. I spoke to them about how, obviously I talked about my experience as a lawyer in India, and then I talked about how I'm applying for a legal assistant position, but eventually my plan is to be a lawyer. I've already written 2 NCAs and I'm left with 3. So I also wanted to understand if I wanted to convert this position into an articling position whenever I do complete my NCAs, what does that look like? Was that a door that would be open from your end? And then I'm glad I did, because then they gave me an assurance actually in the interview that of course if you clear your NCAs and if you do enjoy your work and how you are with the firm and everyone, that door is always open for another discussion. So when I did clear my NCAs, by then it had been a year of me working at the firm anyway. I made such a good relationship with the partner that I was working with anyway, and also the managing partner. So when I did approach them with turning that position into an articling position, it wasn't a discussion. It was like, of course, let's do this. So it wasn't too much of a what do I say? It wasn't a challenge from me. But again, I think it was a mix of luck and hard work. Where for that 1 year, because they did tell me at the interview that it's only if you like how you work and all of that. So I did the put your head down and just work. For that 1 year, that's all I did. I worked and I started for my NCA, so I cleared them as soon as possible, and I can convert all of my work into an articling opportunity. So I did do the hard work for it though.
But this is something that I also struggle with when I go for interviews.
Yeah.
That doesn't the employer want stability? Like, I'm hiring this person as an assistant, and they would be there for at least like 2 years, whatever time. That if I mention that, okay, I'm applying as a legal assistant, but I want to convert it into an articling position, is it wise to mention that? Because I just feel like, won't the employer feel like this person is not going to stick around for long if we don't like convert it, or like, then what is the use of hiring this person?
Well, if the employer does feel like that, I feel like you should leave that job after you're done with your NCAs anyway, because if that job is limiting your growth as a professional, then that's not the right place to work anyway. So I believe you should be open about it with your employer, and that in itself will give you an insight into what that employment is like. Are they invested in your growth? Are they happy to see you grow from a legal assistant to a prospective lawyer in their firm? And if they are not that kind of a place, then I would say the minute you're done with your legal assistant work, anyway leave, because you're not going to progress and grow. Because you got to look at your growth as well as a professional, right? You move to Canada, you have to be selfish to want to grow and only look out for your growth in an employment. Of course, you want to. We have this sense of loyalty sometimes. We've joined an employer. I want to give my best to this employer as a legal assistant, and I don't want to stab them in the back or whatever, turn my back on them once I'm done. But it works very differently here in the West. You kind of have to look out for yourself and no one else will. So be selfish when it comes to, be selfish in a good way. I don't know how to say it in a nicer way, but you kind of have to always look out for your growth and progress because nobody else will. So advocate for yourself and always be very, I would recommend when you do go in for an interview again, be open about the fact that you want to convert it and you want to understand what it would look like from the employer's viewpoint if you want to change it into an admin position, and would that door and that discussion be open for them. And if they say no, then you already know that time is limited at that firm because you're not going to grow.
Yeah. But talking about articling positions.
Yes.
How much prior to whenever you want to start your articling, like when should you start applying for articling positions?
So it had, traditionally, you should apply a year in advance.
Okay.
Traditionally.
So I'm behind.
Oh, but that is if you want to follow the Canadian law school path of applying for articles, where they literally do apply 1 year in advance because the market here is very saturated. There's so many law graduates and there these many articling positions, right? So of course I didn't apply a year in advance, but technically I did work as a legal assistant for a year before I was able to convert it into an articleship. That was also one of the reasons why I didn't want to complete all my NCAs in India before coming here, because what would have happened is I would have completed my NCAs and I would have been ready to article, but no one would have taken me fresh off the boat as an articling student, because everyone would have told me, now that I have a better understanding of the legal market, that everyone would have told me that I think I want to see you work before I offer you articleship. So in a way, I didn't know that then. It just happened that I completed part of it in India and I was left with a few. But my plan was to complete everything and then come fresh and ready to article. But I'm glad I had that 1 year to do that. So I would say in this situation of articling, networking is the biggest advantage you can have. If you know someone, reach out to them and ask them if they have an opening in their firm. And if you know them, don't just say that, hey, we knew each other 10 years ago. I see an opening in your firm. Can you give me a reference? Of course they're not going to. They've never worked with you. They've never seen your work. Asking someone to do that also is a little, I'd say, off-putting for a lot of people, including me. I think it's very important that you kind of start building that network. And unfortunately, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because to get that articling, which means you have to kind of put yourself in uncomfortable situations like networking, put yourself out there, speak to people that you can, or be ready to and be ready to honestly show your worth as a like I did. I was like, fine, I'll start as a legal assistant, but I'll give you that 1 year, you see my work, and then let's see if we can turn it. So traditionally, going the traditional route, apply for 1 year in advance. Work on the cover letter, work on the resume, two very important things. And then it depends on if you want to article in one of the big law firms, you want to article mid-size or small firms. All three have their advantages and disadvantages. I never wanted to article in a big law firm. I never was the person who wanted to have the big corporate life because I saw the cons of it in Delhi, and I never wanted to be part of that life. So I was very happy articling in a because my firm was mid-size firm. So that's what I did. And you just got to put a lot of yourself into it. You have to just be comfortable with getting uncomfortable.
But how do you find articling positions?
Online, you have to kind of go into you need to first do a registry search of what are the law firms that are out there. Then you got to do the funnel approach, right? Start broad. What are the law firms that are there? Fine. So what is the law that I am interested in? So keep funneling it down. After you're coming down, then see, okay, fine. Or from all these firms, what are the firms that have an opening in their firms? Okay, fine. Funnel down from the ones that have an opening, which is the one that I think I would want to be a part of, and not just the employer wants to, you also want to be part of that firm. So you kind of have to look at it both ways. Some people also look at articling as a foot in the door, which is not wrong at all, because foreign trained lawyers, sometimes you actually just need that foot in the door. So even if it's a law which you think you don't, because immigration, I articled in an immigration law firm. I had never done it. And when I applied for the legal assistant position at an immigration law firm, I did it for a foot in the door. I was like, I don't know what immigration law is. I've never done it. I came through it, so I have a little understanding of what immigration law is. But back then, I didn't really think this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life in Canada. It was more of foot in the door. I got it, and then it just happened to work out. So even if in that articling, when you do the funnel approach and you're coming down and you're down to like, I'm not sure if I want to do this, but I feel like this may get me a foot in the door, take it. Honestly, take it. Because articling is so competitive that it's a take it if you can sort of a situation. It doesn't necessarily, the good part about articling here also is that just because you article in that field doesn't mean you have to be a lawyer in that field. I know of so many lawyers who did all these big fancy articling, but they went and did something else. Like someone did their articling in tax, but now they're a real estate lawyer. So like a hard left completely, and that's totally fine. So if you feel like that articling opportunity is also something that you're getting which you don't necessarily want to do, but it's gonna help you become a lawyer and then you can choose an opportunity. It's not the most traditional conventional advice I would like to give, but it's the reality where you sometimes also just need a foot in the door to get to the next step. So take it.
So how long is an articling position generally in BC? Because I assume it's different for different
provinces. It's different for different provinces, yeah, and I don't have much knowledge about the others. But in BC, articling is for a year. It's actually 9 months. The whole articling thing is for a year, where out of the 12 months, 9 months is where you article at a law firm, and the 3 months you study for the bar, which is when you enroll yourself in PLTC.
Okay.
So that whole thing takes about a year.
So now let's talk about it.
Okay.
The licensing procedure.
Yeah.
So you article and then you have to go for PLTC, which I think is a 10-week course.
Yeah, I think somewhere around 10. Yeah, 10 weeks.
So what do those 10 weeks look like?
Those 10 weeks were one of the toughest weeks of my life. Like they were again, and it goes back to me also not being the best exam taker. But it was, and I thought it was just me, but when I actually went into PLTC, I realized everyone's miserable along with me, so I didn't feel too left out in the misery. But I don't know if I should say this, but I guess I can. I don't necessarily think PLTC is important. Like, I don't think the bar exam added any value to me as a lawyer. But I understand why they need to have that exam for you to become a lawyer. But I feel like it's set up in such a way, and this is something I've noticed now after so many years in this profession, that our profession is set up to mentally push us to the edge, like as much as we can, until we like almost at the point of breaking, then you're like, oh, congratulations, you're a lawyer. Right? So I don't know how and why our industry is set up in such a way, which is why we have so much of talk about mental health struggle, addiction, substance abuse, alcoholism, which is so prevalent in the legal industry. It's for all of this. I'm not so sure why our industry, and it's not just Canada, it's not just in Delhi. Delhi was exactly the same as Vancouver, the Canadian thing that I can talk about. It's the same struggle, same hustle, like exactly the same. So PLTC, the licensing procedure, like you said, so 1 year is that, and the PLTC, the 10 weeks were very tough for me. I remember I told Harsh, I said that listen, for these 10 weeks I'm not going to cook and I'm not going to clean, I'm not going to do anything in the house. I can only study, and that's all I did. And that wasn't enough. I actually had to retake my bar exam. I had to retake my solicitor's side of my bar exam because it was too much. I couldn't handle it. It was too much. So, but that was just me. Again, this is just me.
No,
my
but like
experience.
whoever I've spoken to, they failed the solicitor exam at least once.
Solicitor is this is something I would advise, and it's not. I don't know if it's the right advice, but if you honestly just want to pass the bar exam, try an article in a business law firm. If you don't already have prior experience in business law, do article in one of the subjects that are there in PLTC. It'll actually really help you.
Okay.
Because when I did immigration, immigration doesn't come up in any of the syllabus.
Not at all.
Comes up just for 2 lines in real estate where it says if you're a provincial nominee, you are exempt from the foreign buyer's ban.
Yeah.
That's it. So, so for me, not having gone to a Canadian law school where you have professors to ask all these questions to, and you kind of study a little bit of everything that you redo in PLTC in your Canadian law school. So you kind of have a little bit of idea of everything. So to redo, first was NCA, which you redo without a professor or anything, any guidance as such, self-study. Then you come to PLTC, where again it's the same thing. You haven't gone to a Canadian law school, so you have no idea of what real estate and all of that. You're studying it for the first time, and you have 10 weeks to do it. I think it's okay if you don't make it the first time. I think it's very normal if you don't make it the first time. If you do, amazing. Like, that's great. Like, hats off to you from my side at least. But I think if you don't, I was very hard on myself, but I think it's normal to not do it because it's a lot. And I anyway was so non-corporate-ish in my law approach since India. So shareholder agreements, this is all what solicitors is like. It was a complete like a blank situation for me, and I was going through my stuff. I'm like, what is all this? I don't know anything. So if you have a little bit of experience in that, I think it'll really be an advantage. But if you don't, then you gotta like really double down and study.
So what's the difference between the solicitor exam and the barrister exam?
It's as the name suggests. So barrister exam is more like your CPC, CRPC sort of subjects, where you will do more of the procedure code. So it's more of if you were a litigator.
Okay.
So the barrister was, because of my 4 years as a barrister, as a litigator in India, the barrister module was like I could just skim through it. I was like, oh, I know this, because the foundations are still similar because we're common law. There's just a few things that changed. So barrister's module was so easy for me. For that reason, because my knowledge and my practical experience in India can't account it. So I feel like if there's a corporate lawyer coming from India and they have to do PLTC, I feel like the solicitor module, which is more corporate-ish, it will be easy for them. Because I know of people who struggle with the barrister's exam who were previously corporate lawyers in India. So I think it's more to do with where did you have more experience with. Working knowledge is very important to understand PLTC. So, which is why I do think that if you're articling in one of the subjects, it kind of gives you an added advantage.
Okay.
It's not necessary because I didn't and I still passed, even though I had to rewrite it eventually, but I did. But if you have it, it is an advantage for sure.
So, I mean, I just want to know your opinion about this one thing.
Yeah.
Some provinces don't have a bar exam. How does that make you feel? Like, do you feel like, because as far as I hear, the process for BC is the hardest in the country.
It is, yeah. That's what I
So,
heard and
like, would you like go back and be like, okay, I'll just go article in Alberta for a year and then like transfer later on, like?
I wouldn't do that because anything and everything you do in the legal field here in BC, it's interpersonal relationships. So if I were to go and article in, let's say Alberta, and then come find a job in Vancouver, I have to kind of start from scratch of building that relationship with someone. So for me, because I kind of understood that just generally from my experience in India, that everything is about personal relationships here and maintaining and kind of, you need to have that kind of connection with someone. So I was ready to put that effort in. I knew it was going to be painful. It was painful. But I knew that I had to, if I wanted a job in Vancouver, I had to do everything in Vancouver. Otherwise, I would have had to start from scratch again. And I wanted to do everything from scratch at one place only.
But do you feel like the bar exam is like important? Like, why do some provinces not have this exam?
I don't know, that's a question for the province. But I don't know. I don't think personally the bar, like I said in the beginning, I don't think the bar exam necessarily added any value to me as a lawyer. Of course, there's still a few things that I only know because of the bar exam. I think the part where the bar exam really helps is the assessments, the drafting part.
Okay.
There's a drafting assessment, there's a legal research assessment, there's an advocacy assessment where you have to kind of argue like you would in court.
Yeah.
So I feel like those assessments are supremely important. The bar exam, not so much.
Okay.
So if I could just do the articling part, which I think is a real world experience of what it would be, your life would be like if you were a lawyer, super important. Should not do away with articling at all.
Yeah.
But if I could redo the bar exam part, I would take away the bar exam and just keep the assessments.
Okay.
Those assessments genuinely help you if you want to be a lawyer in Canada, because one of the key differences between Indian, okay, I'm still going to stick to Delhi. The way the Delhi system works is drafting, which we were talking about before this interview as well. Drafting is so different.
Yeah.
It's so direct, simple here. Like you kind of talk right as you would speak, but little formally, of course, because it's still the legal industry. But in India, because of the whole British influence, we spend so much of our time making it flowery, making it fancy, and some more often than not, you don't even understand what the person's drafted. Here, it's so different, and I kind of prefer it this way. But I remember the first few times as a law clerk, even though you technically don't draft and some legal stuff, but like I was still like I said, my boss had huge respect for me as a lawyer, so he would be like, why don't you attempt it? Like obviously you're not going to be the one doing, but I want to see what your legal thinking is like.
Yeah.
So the first time I drafted a judicial review for him, I came back all in red, and he actually held that paper up. He's like, Tanuja, like, who drafts like this? And I said, what do you mean? He said, no, you're going to confuse the person who's reading all this. I said, but this is how I learned to draft. And he said, big no. He said, no, he said, unlearn how you learned how to draft. This is how we draft. And to be honest, I think my ideas and my arguments would flow a lot more organically when I was not trying to add a hitherto and all those the fancy things that we add here and there. Drafting here I prefer it here so much more. So I think for those things, because drafting as a lawyer is like your foundation as a lawyer, right? How you draft. So I think that's why those assessments really help.
So if not immigration law, then what do you see yourself doing?
I thought about this, and actually Harsh told me you should think about this question because Sukhmani might ask you that question. And I thought about it for a little while, and I did say that just as a person, I am very passionate about animal law. I would have liked to either do that or practice indigenous law. But I also have to keep in mind the city that I live in and the cost that comes with the city. And as much as I would like to do it, I don't think it would be financially viable to do it. But if not immigration, it would either be animal rights or indigenous law.
Now we're coming towards the end of this session. So I just have two questions to you.
Yeah, of course.
The first one is that in your entire journey, from the moment you landed in Canada to now, is there something which now you feel in hindsight like, oh, I could have done this thing better, it could have saved me some time, or I could have done something to make the NCA prep process slightly easier? Anything that you feel like you could have done differently?
That's also a good question, and that's something Harsh told me Sukhmani might ask you, so prepare for that too. So Harsh kind of knew those two things. I did think about that, to be honest, and I was like, what is it that I would do differently, or what I would like to redo? In terms of I think I wouldn't necessarily redo in terms of the process, and I actually honestly I struggled with this question when I was even trying to think about what would I do differently. Is more of, I guess I would have studied harder, so I didn't have to retake my NCA or my PLTC. But I'm being realistic. I don't think I would have, given my bandwidth as a exam taker. But I wish I probably maybe would have delayed. So my NCA, my legal assistant, my NCA, my articling, everything together took me 2.5 years to complete. It would have saved me 6 months. So instead of 2.5 months, I would have, instead of being a 2021 call, I would have been a 2020 call. So because that 6 months into 2021 kind of costed me those 6 months. So that's probably the only thing that would have helped me. But In terms of the process per se, I don't think I would have changed it. I think I liked my flow of coming as a legal assistant, having to write my NCAs, because I was able to apply a lot of that working knowledge in my NCA exams, and then I liked how it segued into my articling the way it did, and then the PLTC was what it was, but I wish it was just the assessments, and then but in terms of the process, I liked how it went. I won't lie. Like I said, I wish I would have studied a little harder, so my 6 months could have been saved. But otherwise, I think what I would do differently is, initially when I just moved to Canada, and I don't know if it's how all new immigrants feel when they move to a new country, I don't know if that's how you felt, is you try and you're treading a very fine balance between staying true to who you are, but also fitting into a new culture.
Yeah.
So I think I'm now in a position where I can tread that balance a lot more. But initially I was still finding a balance about fitting in the new culture and how things are done. And I think in a lot of ways I didn't speak up for myself or for my Indian culture as much as I should have in situations. But I was too new and I didn't want to rock the boat. And I didn't want to lose an opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of stayed quiet, but I don't know if I were to go back, I would still speak up in that specific situation. But I wish I kind of had the knowledge or the confidence to back then be like, that's not okay. And no, India is not that. And no, Indian people don't do that. And Indian people don't fly on carpets and go to school. And so many things that you kind of have to hear about a culture day in and day out. Most of the times I would just be like, I can't help this person, but because you gotta tread that balance. But now I think I'm in a taken me 5 years of understanding how things are. Doesn't mean I don't struggle with it. Now I do. There's still moments, but I think I'm more confident now of myself as a person, as a professional here in Canada, about how much am I going to fit in and how much I'm going to retain of who I am.
And the last question for all of you guys who are watching this video, hopefully till the end, any tips for people who have just started with this entire journey of like 2-3 years? Anything helpful that you would want to tell them?
I'm trying to think of things that have already haven't said, like in bits and pieces, but
or maybe like motivational.
Oh.
Because we do need that sometimes.
No, I also need motivation on a daily basis. Even if I'm not writing my NCs and PLTC, you kind of do need motivation. But what I would say is, because my life has failed. I failed each and every exam I've given in my life, starting from school. मैं 10th compartment में fail हुई थी यार, मैं maths में भी compartment आई थी, मैं college में fail हुई, मैं NCA में fail हुई, मैं bar exam में fail हुई. I failed all my life consistently, but I'm still where you are, right? We're still at the same place. So then that's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter, dude. It doesn't matter.
Okay, so on an ending note,
yes,
whatever's been said and spoken about till now, is there anything that you'd like to add?
I actually would, because like I said, I did forget a few things, and I took notes, so I want to make sure I touch on those. I made notes on like tips when you're applying to a company, the things to keep in mind, and we talked about cover letter, resume. The other thing I would really recommend people do is research the company.
Okay.
Or the firm that you want to join. Research, go on their website, go on everything, because here they have a news section where mostly law firms also post about what is the most recent achievement we had, where did we get featured, or one of our lawyers did get featured. So read all of that, and go on their LinkedIn, go through the profiles of the lawyers who are there, go on LinkedIn, go through the profile of the lawyers also who are there in it. So like get a complete holistic viewpoint of the firm, because one of the things that it's a very good way to tie it into a conversation, because that's what I did at my interview. I read their achievement section and all, and one of it was they'd gone to CBC Radio to discuss something on Islamophobia, or there was one of those topics. So when that person happened to be in my interview, I actually like, and I read about the fact that you did that interview recently with CBC on Islamophobia. Just curious, like, how was that experience for you? Yeah. So like I kind of tied that into my interview thing, which I think helped, because then that gives the person the impression that, okay, so this person has done research on the company that they want to join, so they haven't just randomly applied and seeing whether they'll get an opportunity or not. So it just shows intent. And any employer wants to see that oh, you're interested, you're genuinely interested to join me. So I'd say research the company, and we talked about that how it's more personality based and not so much knowledge, and reach out to somebody in the field if you can to get to know how is it to work in that company. And people here are very receptive to LinkedIn messages, but you have to approach LinkedIn messages very carefully. Don't be too casual if you don't know that person. Don't be like, hey Sukhmani, hope you're well. I want, I saw there's an opportunity in your firm. I just want to have a quick chat about it. If you know the person, yes, that's the right way to go about it. But if you've never spoken to the person, talk a little bit about yourself. Like, hey Sukhmani, I hope you're well. I saw that there's a opening at your firm. I would love to talk to you about it. Just as a way of background, I am a lawyer from India. I have this much experience, and I'm looking to move to this part, and I'm super curious to get to know how you feel about, pick your brain on these topics. So do you think it would be okay if we could connect over a quick chat or coffee, whatever you prefer? Give a little bit of background. Don't always just throw just any message on LinkedIn, too direct, too casual if you haven't met or seen the person. So I'd say definitely reach out to the person. People are very receptive. And the one thing that was very important, which actually Harsh reminded me of, was knowing the why. The why of why you want to apply to for that position, and also why specifically that company, because this is a question that always get asked in all interviews. So why did you apply for this position? Have an answer ready in your head of why did you apply, and not have a generic response of, because I think this is where researching the company comes into play. I wanted to apply for this to your company because talk about your skills, and then talk about, I saw that you've invested, you invest a lot in people skills, as I saw on the website. You do this is an initiative at the firm which resonates with me, and I really appreciate that the firm does that. So you kind of have to tie in a lot of things with the why, and they'll always ask you why us. So you have to always talk about why the position and why us. So definitely do a lot of research into and digging up into the why of why you're applying for this two-part question, which will always get asked in the interview. So just those things that I'd like to mention apart from what we just discussed. And we talked about the difference between how life as a lawyer was like in Delhi versus now Vancouver, and I did touch on most things, but just wanted to talk about the one thing that stands out for me apart from the hierarchy, because here the drafting we touched upon how in Delhi it's always hustle, there's a badge of honor. And personally speaking, I think I had 3 burnouts in those 4 years because of so much exhaustion, complete. And if you don't do it, there's another person waiting to do it. And sheer population also you could say, but there's another person waiting to take your job. So if you don't do it, somebody else will, right? So that was one of the things that when you asked me that question of what made you want to move to Canada, not Canada per se, but just generally when I started thinking about, I want to move to a new country just to see and work for a little while, it was this, because I realized I think my 2nd or 3rd year into litigation, there is a first generation lawyer. And just because I feel like this doesn't mean all first gen lawyers feel like this, because I know first gen lawyers who are litigating who have done really well for themselves as well. But I realized that as a first gen lawyer, I'll have to work to get to where I want. I'm going to have to work at least 10-15 years, which maybe a 2nd or a 3rd gen can get in 5 years. And it didn't seem a very lucrative option for me to give my youth doing that. Because I knew how smart I was. I had full faith in my intelligence, and I knew that I'm a hard worker. But then the results I knew that I was going to get by doing all of this was not what I think I would have wanted. So which was one of those factors that kind of propelled my decision completely. Let's just do it. Let's move out. And the one thing that I would say is, in the 5 years of, I moved here in 2018 and it's 2023, it's been 5 years. In this 5 years of starting from a legal assistant to article to failing my exams to now being a lawyer, the amount I feel like achieved, not just professionally, also financially, is something it would have taken me 15 years to do in Delhi. So I kind of cut that journey more than half, and I think I am here today, settled and content professionally and personally and financially because of that. And I know it's not meant for everyone, because the thing is, a lot of people sometimes ask me, like, was it worth it for you to start from scratch? Because when I talk to people who want to come, and my peers, I would say, my age, and they always ask me, like, Tanuja, do you think it was worth it? And it's a very good question, but very subjective one, because I think it was worth it only because I think I moved here at the right time. I moved here when I was 27, so it was like 4 years in India, in Delhi. So I was not too senior. I hadn't achieved a lot in my career. I was still in a good place where I was learning constantly, and so for me to start from scratch felt okay, because when I moved at 27 was also the age where people here become lawyers. So I wasn't too far behind even in the Canadian market, and I didn't plan it that way. It just so happened because जिंदगी में वक्त से पहले किस्मत से ज़्यादा कुछ नहीं मिलता, तो जब वक्त था, time to move is when I moved. And somehow just happened to work that way. But if I were my age right now, because I have my colleagues, my peers from college who are now partners in law firms, and even if not my classmates, someone in a 4th year is also a partner now, someone in a 3rd year was also a partner now in law firms, and I don't think I would not do it from scratch if I had done it, if I were to do it in my 30s. So was it worth it? Yes, but because I did it in my 20s, starting from scratch. I may not be so inclined to start from scratch when I'm a partner in a law firm in India, or when I've achieved a lot in India and then I have to start all the way from the bottom. So moving to Canada, doing all of this, whatever we discussed today, it's so subjective. There'll never be one right answer to all your questions. It'll all depend on how you are as a person, as a professional, as a student, as an exam taker, and just the ideas you have in life and what you want to achieve, and what does your life plan look to you? What does your vision look like? My vision looked very different, which is why I moved out. But that doesn't mean I don't think about going back home every day. I have this conversation with Harsh so much. I'm like, I think when I retire, I want to retire in India. Like, I can't be so far away from my motherland. Like, I just can't. As the mothership, I have to. वो ऐसे बुलावा आता रहता है कभी ना कभी from the mothership. But of course, Harsh is so happy. But I may just do it sometime. I don't know. But yeah, that's pretty much it. What I wanted to basically cover. I think that's it. But yeah.
Oh, okay. So on that note, thank you so much for watching this video. Do subscribe, like, comment, and I will be. Can I link your LinkedIn in
of course, please
description in case you want to? And now you know how to message her. So guys, be nice. And yes, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.